Kia ora and welcome to another Physiotherapy Board Te Puari Tiaki Tinana podcast. This episode is one of a series of short podcasts from a recent conversation between Board Te Puari professional advisor Damon Nurick and Jessie Snowdon. Jessie is a physiotherapist and the founder and director of On The Go Physio. She graduated from Otago University in 1998 and has worked in Christchurch, Edinburgh and London in a variety of roles. Jessie has experience working with people with a range of neurological, orthopaedic and age-related conditions and is passionate about improving patient and carers' safety through the delivery of effective moving and handling training and education. This extract is on the subject of informed consent, and there are more bite-sized extracts from this conversation in our podcast feed, which you can subscribe to wherever you normally find your podcasts.
So one area I've really been interested in, not having worked in older adult care for a long time, is the place of informed consent. Because I think informed consent is one of those often misunderstood areas. It's thought about as being binary. You either can consent or you can't. What does it look like in the space that you work in?
For adults that live in aged care, or there's older adults who have capacity, it looks the same.
Yep.
So it's just the same. This is what we're going to do. Is it okay? Does that sound okay? I often say, does that seem sensible? But you're basically getting consent in the same way you do for anyone. And then I'm often, in my particular role, I'm often not doing something that's particularly dangerous. So I'm not doing acupuncture. I'm not usually doing manips. So it's mainly mobility, exercise, strengthening. So explaining that and trying to remember to explain the risk of not as well.
Yeah.
So that's fine. You don't feel like exercising. It's important that you know.
Yeah.
This is what happens.
Yeah.
If you don't, and again, putting it in language that's more approachable. But that is quite challenging.
So with, say, in a patient in Kiritaki with diminished capacity or altered capacity, whether that's permanent or temporary, and we take maybe dementia as an example of that.
Yes.
How does that differ? How do you adapt?
So then people with so even if you haven't got EPOA, even if your family are making your health and financial decision, you still have the right to give consent within your capacity.
Yeah.
And that might be something as simple as you are walking with somebody as part of their mobility assessment and they turn around or they pull their hand out of yours, because sometimes that's the most appropriate way to take someone for a walk as a handhold. That's them removing consent at that point, or saying, it's not often no, sometimes it is, but it's explaining a little bit about what you're doing in really simple terms. Like I always say, even if I'm not sure they understand what a physio is, I try not to be complicated, but I will always say, I'm Jessie, I'm the physio. And then it also looks, in dementia, it also looks like allowing up to 15 seconds for a statement to be heard.
Which is a long time.
It's a long time, and you're monitoring all the time. So I'm watching, I've crouched down to their level, and I'm waiting to see if it looks like it's sinking in or not. So you're doing, it's so hard to put it in words what you're doing. There's a lot going on with communication. And then you're offering, if the goal is to do a mobility assessment because I've started falling, for example, then I won't explain that in depth. I'll say, I've come to see how you walk. Yeah. Or sometimes, again, I'll say something, I've come to check out your arms and legs and give you a warrant of fitness. And, just using language that they understand. And then the going for the walk component. So I won't say I want to look at how you stand up. I'll just say, let's go for a walk. And sometimes in more advanced dementia, that looks like me offering a hand and saying, let's go, and using my body to show that we're about to get going. And that can work really well. And sometimes you just get that look of, no, I'm not going to join you. And then that's fine too. You don't push that. I might come back later. I'll talk to the caregivers about when that person is normally walking, try and jump in, or I might come and help with, I might say, I'll come back next week and I'll help with cares. Can you wait for me? I'll come at 9. I'll come straight to the room and I'll help with cares for the morning so I can see how they roll in bed, how they get up, and how they walk.
So it's the adapting from that, and I was guilty of this when I first learned about informed consent is coming away from the form where I read out the paragraph and everyone gets the same paragraph or everyone gets a similar paragraph and is that okay? Yes, no, because I think sometimes that's how it can be perceived as what we need to do. But as you said, it's that adaptation for who's in front of us. What is this? And if we look at patient-centered care, what do they need from us to get that information?
Yeah, and what is no and what is yes, it's really different. And then you have to document it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So that's fun. And we have, most of my team will use similar language, and it will be something like unable to get informed consent due to advanced dementia or, for some reason, therefore acted in their best interest and monitored for distress. So that's my key phrase that I like, that we're at no stage are we doing something that causes distress. I think that acknowledges it there. With that,
I think it's really lovely. We talked about a story a while ago that where maybe informed consent and some risks may have been, appropriate. Would you mind telling us? Because I thought it was a great story.
This was an interesting one, and it was one that I reflected on later. I didn't think about it at the time. It was a woman who had lived in aged care, was relatively young, but had a slight intellectual disability and social issues. So she hadn't been caring for herself properly at home. So she moved into aged care. And she had, in my lymphedema colleagues who did help me out there, she had lymphedema, and she was at the point where it was coming through the skin. So her skin wasn't weeping as such, but she had blisters formed with lymph fluid in them. And when I went back through her notes, she'd been seen in the past and had declined anything to do with any sort of management of her lymphedema. So bandaging, compression, she declined it all. She went on over the next 6 months that I was aware of her. She went on to get leg infections, and that ultimately led to her dying young. And afterwards I thought, I wonder if anybody, when she declined to use the stockings and the go through that pathway, I wondered if anyone had ever actually explained to her that the consequences of not.
Yeah.
So did she just decline and they went, oh, that's fine, she's stubborn anyway, she often refuses things, we won't push it? Or did someone actually say this could kill you? Because she had goals. She had a goal to get to the mall with her cousin, and we were working on her with the physio assistant, increasing her mobility to be enough to walk around the mall. So she was nowhere near actively dying or being end of life in her mind. But as I said, it was later I reflected, like, actually, I wonder if we as a health system have actually failed her.
I think it's really honest, and I think we have those stories that stick with us throughout our careers.
That really did.
And it reminds me that we came from an era of telling the patient or caretaker what was going to happen, especially I come from an MSK sports background, that we would simply grab a limb and start working on it.
Yeah.
Through to we did ask them, but the information wasn't always there either. Yeah. Through to now, as you said, that here's the risks, here's the consequences. You do or don't. You don't have to. It's your choice. But here is the information that you need to make that decision.
Yes.
This has been a Physiotherapy Board Te Puari Tiaki Tinana podcast. It was recorded on Wednesday the 11th of February 2026 and featured Board Professional Advisor Damon Nurick in conversation with founder and director of On The Go Physio Jessie Snowdon. There are more bite-sized extracts from that conversation in our podcast feed. To receive these episodes automatically, you can subscribe to us wherever you normally find your podcasts. As always, if you want to share your thoughts about it with us, you can email us at physio@physioboard.org.nz. Kia ora.